Welcome to G-Man Gaming and Reviews. So today we're going to do a video called Dragon Age Origins Tips with no spoilers. What we're going to do is we're going to really dive into Dragon Age Origins because with a new Dragon Age game on the horizon, which is the Veilguard, I thought I would go back to and just play all the games. I've played Dragon Age Origins before a lot. Part 2 I haven't played completely, so I thought I would cover this game because it's a really awesome game. I've got a lot of good memories with this game, and there's a lot of complexity going on which can make it kind of problematic for beginners to get into. So I thought I would go through all the basics that are really helpful to know when you're first starting out trying to play Dragon Age Origins. So the first thing that we're going to cover is character creation tips. So when you first start a game of Dragon Age Origins, you'll start on this screen. Now, for the actual sake of in-game character, it doesn't really matter what gender you pick. It only changes things like relation to companions and stuff like that. So it doesn't really affect anything. Now, the three main races, or not races, we'll cover the races first. So there's only three races in Dragon Age Origins. Human, elf, and you can see here if you scroll down the bottom what are the racial benefits, and dwarfs, right? Now, which race you pick, it obviously affects what your starting story is going to be, which is one of the really awesome parts in the game, because each background has its own unique origin story, which runs for about half an hour or something like that. So whichever race you pick is going to be not really going to affect the game. It'll affect the story, but it won't really affect your gameplay too much. It's more about what classes it unlocks. So the human has access to all the classes, and there are only three classes in this game: warrior, mage, and rogue. Right? Now, if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons style games, you pretty much are going to know what these classes are. The warrior is your heavily armored fighter who can either be a tank or a damage dealer, depending upon which talents you specialize in, right? The mage is your typical mage. They're very like glass cannons, but they have spells, which means they're really good at crowd control and doing other sorts of things, and healing. They're your magic users. And then you have your rogues, who are, you kind of need one because you need them to unlock things. They can also disarm traps. You can either play them as a ranged character. Now, you can have a warrior as a ranged character as well. Your warrior has access to archery talents, but generally I tend to focus on making them fighters. So rogues are more of support. Now, the thing about rogues is that there's one of two ways that you can build them: as a ranged character or as a fighter. The advantage of having them be a fighter is rogues get access to what's called the backstab ability, which means if they get behind an enemy and attack them with a melee attack, they actually do additional damage. They also have skills like stealth that allow them to scout up in order to see what's happening, and they can also place traps as well. Other characters can do that too, but rogues are really good at placing traps because they have stealth. Now, in the game, with each of these classes, you are going to unlock specializations, which allow you to tailor your character further. So the way that the game works is it's kind of a modular system in the sense that so, for instance, with warriors, they can either focus on two-handed weapons, weapon and shield, archery, or dual weapons, right? Weapon and shield makes them a tank. The two-handed is for damage. I haven't really used the dual one before, but that's also it's more about quick attacks and crowd control. So because you can unlock specializations in the game, you can really sort of tailor your characters in a more modular way, right? So if you pick a warrior, right? The main skills that you should be allocating are strength and strength and constitution are the main ones, but strength is better because strength allows you to equip heavier armor, right? And in this game, it's armor that keeps you alive, right? The heavier the armor that you equip, the more damage you can tank, right? Constitution is increasing your life, but it's better to have heavy armor. So strength is the main attribute here. For mages, it's magic and willpower, right? Magic is like it's almost like with the strength stat for warriors, that for all characters actually, the rogue and to an extent the rogue and the warrior, strength determines how much damage you do, right? So magic is this with physical attacks, that is. So magic is like the strength of magic, right? The higher your magic is, the more damage or the more effective your spells become, right? Now, for rogues, you want dexterity and cunning, right? So dexterity and cunning is really important. Dexterity, obviously, not only do you need it for skills, for talent, sorry, you also need it because dexterity increases your defense, and cunning as well. Cunning in this game is like your charisma stat also. It's actually used for persuade checks. You also have another type of social dialogue check called intimidate, which is based on your strength. Now, your main character does have access to a skill called coercion that they can level up that makes them better at passing social checks. But yeah, so the thing is that whichever class you start off with, it's going to change your build as to which companions you get, because the game is quite flexible. But like, for instance, you do need at least one warrior, right, to tank damage, right? You need at least a rogue in order to be able to disarm traps and unlock chests. And then after that, you sort of have to decide whether you want another. You're going to need a mage for potentially healing and crowd control. After that, you get one more character, which can pretty much be whatever you want. I normally have it be if I'm playing in my recent playthrough, I played as a warrior, a human noble warrior, and I made that person into a tank by focusing on the weapon and shield tree, and also some specializations, right? So the next thing that we're going to talk about is that we're going to move on to is party composition and management. Actually, we'll go back to the previous section. So you got to have a balanced build in this game, right? A balanced team, right? Because the way the game works, depending upon how you handle an encounter, can determine whether you beat it or whether you lose it. And mages in this game, especially enemy mages, are really powerful. Like, they can down your party in a single spell if you're not careful. So having a balanced party is really important for being able to deal with all the different challenges that the game is going to throw to you. And this game will throw at you very different challenges, and depending upon how you do your builds with your companions and your main character will determine whether or not you find this game difficult or whether the game is manageable. So it's really important to understand. So we're going to move on to the next section now. All right, welcome to section 2, where we talk about party composition and management. So this is the part where we're going to talk about building a balanced party. So I sort of covered this before, but you mainly need a tank, a damage dealer, a healer, and support. Now, so in my case, if you have a look at my character here, I've made this character, my main character, into a tank, right? So the way that I've done this is I've focused on weapon and shield. So weapon and shield has a lot of defensive abilities that make this character really good for tanking. And I've also taken some specializations. So the specializations I've taken for this character is Templar and Champion. The reason being is because this character is a tank. So Templar has a lot of abilities that are useful against magic, and Champion has a lot of crowd control abilities as well. So this character is going to be in the thick of the fighting, right? And he's going to be using skills like Threaten, which is a sustained skill, in order to draw enemy hostility towards them and away from my mages and my rogues, right? So when I normally take a party, I do this, right? So these are all the characters that are unlocked, I think, for now. So what I tend to do is, because my main character is a warrior, I tend to take one other warrior, which will either be Shale, Alistair, or Sten. The reason I'm focusing on Sten or Shale is because my main character is a tank. Alistair also starts with a little bit of weapon and shield, so Sten becomes my main damage dealer. You can also have the dog Churchill as well to be your main damage dealer. And then I will take a mage. You've got Morrigan and Wynn. I generally take Wynn because she's a healer, so that makes her very useful. Or you can take, you can actually turn Morrigan into a healer as well, which is also useful. And then I take, I take her. So we got our mage, and then I take Liliana, or Zevron, but Liliana at this point, because she has skills because she's a rogue, which means she can disarm traps and open locks. So we're just going to cancel this for a second, right? So if we have a look at the tree for the characters here, okay, so this is the rogue tree, right? So let's have a look here. So one of the things to make a note about this game is that you'll notice here that the skills are in a 4x4 grid, right? And in order to access the skill on the end of one of the grids, you have to have unlocked all the talents beforehand. Sorry, talents, not skills, right? So you sort of have to, because you can only unlock one talent at a time per level up, you sort of seriously have to think about what you're going to build with each of your characters, right? Because it really does matter. Some things to make it count is with a rogue, you'll need this skill tree here in order to do lock picking and disarming traps, which is very important. And then you've got stealth here. Stealth is very useful for a rogue because it allows them to set traps, especially when they get to this ability here, I believe it is. Yeah, so like I said, you kind of need. So when you're building a party, you sort of really need to think about what your roles are going to be for each of your characters, right? The game is pretty good in that it gives you these specializations that allow you to sort of tailor your character to a particular role, but you still have to think about it in advance, especially with mages. You'll actually see here that mages have a lot of skill trees, right? But each mage is going to start with a certain amount of unlocked spells, which is sort of going to affect what spells you pick. Now, with mages in particular, it really does matter what spells you pick. The thing is, in this game, spells can really turn the tide of battle. So it really does matter which spells you pick and which spells you start off. Wind starts off with a lot of creation spells, mainly focused on healing, and she starts with the Spirit Hero specialization, which makes her good at healing. But I also took one of this spell because she kept getting killed by mages. So when she's got this on, it makes it harder to kill. Now, the other thing that I was going to talk about was with characters. So with spells and talents, which are the ones that you use in battle, there are sustained abilities and active abilities, or activated abilities, right? Sustained abilities, like Shield Wall, they use a certain amount of stamina. So if you look at the character here on the top left, you'll see there's a yellow bar and a red bar. Red bar is health, yellow bar is stamina, or for mages, the yellow bar is mana, right? So if I was to put the Shield Wall ability on, you'll see that it automatically uses a certain amount of stamina in order to keep it active, right? So, one of the things about this game is that you only have a certain amount of spells that you can put in your spell bar down bottom, right? So, one of the things that makes this game very different is that you're not going to be using every single skill that you unlock, right? Simply put, for the reason that there's just too many of them to have listed. So, for instance, I don't use shield cover, right? Simply put, because it's only for deflecting missile attacks. Generally, I just have Shield Wall on for this character. And then I've got the abilities like Taunt and Threaten. Threaten is another sustained ability that makes the character more threatening. And Taunt is like a activated ability that any nearby enemies will become more likely to target my tank, right? So with a warrior and a mage in particular, you're only going to really focus on one tree. You might do specializations in one main tree, but that's what you're going to do. So in this game in particular, you really have to think about party composition. If you're going to have a warrior, don't go putting abilities into weapon and shield and two-handed at the same time, because it's just not worth it. You're going to end up with a weaker character overall. You're better off focusing on one skill specialization, and then having your in one talent tree, and having your main talent tree and your specializations as that character. So you sort of really need to think about your team composition with this. And one of the things about this is that if you haven't played this game before, it can be really hard to figure that out when you're first getting started. So what I might do is I might do a video later on where I go into each particular class and I talk about the abilities. But for now, just mainly focus on, if you're dealing with main warriors, focus on having a single main talent, weapon and shield, dual weapon, or two-handed. Let's have a look here. With rogues, you're probably not going to, like, I haven't really gone too far into the archery tree because I was too busy getting these skills, but very important. Now the next thing that we're going to cover is skills. So these are different from spells and talents in that you generally you use these sort of out of combat. Now, the way that it works is every 3 levels for a warrior and a mage, and every 2 levels for a rogue, you get to pick one skill, right? Now, these skills are really powerful, right? And they can completely change the way the game plays, right? So, we'll go back to the main character first. So the main character has this extra skill called coercion, which makes them better at doing social checks, right? This is only on your main character, and you need to get your cunning up in order to use it. Now, I'll go back to Liliana for a second. Now, we'll start with Steal, which is a skill that all characters can unlock, but rogues are better at it because they use cunning. Stealing is just for basically pickpocket. It's the pickpocketing skill. You use it out of combat for the most part, and that's pretty much it. So when you go to, one of the things that's weird about this game is that there are no consequences for getting caught stealing, but it's very important. One thing that I didn't cover is that you sort of need to have this device mastery unlocked so you can lockpick things. It's very important. So we'll go back to skills. So there's trap making. Now, I've been experimenting with this, but realistically, what trap making when combined with stealth can be useful, it basically allows you to construct different types of traps, right? Some of them are really powerful, but I have this memory of previously using a grease trap to beat a whole bunch of enemies, but for the most part, trap making is not really that useful. So if I go into, if I have a look here, if I go into my inventory, you have, I must have sold them all. All good. So basically, like they allow you to set traps so that you can, now traps can be, here we go. Here they are. So if you have a look at this, a small grease trap, what happens is your player places it, right, while in stealth, right, and it'll actually show you that the trap is armed, and then if an enemy steps into it, it'll unleash. So I've unlocked large caltrop trap and small grease traps, but I would say for beginners, I wouldn't really worry about traps, simply put because they seem to be very difficult to use, because in this game, the main dangerous enemies are mages, right? And mages are never going to come to you. I have found very little times when I've actually been able to make use of traps really well. So not a skill I would focus on, but that's what it does. The next one is survival. This allows you to basically see enemies on the map, and also to tell you their level. As you level it up. Some people really love this skill. I personally haven't put too many points into it because I use stealth. So I'll have Liliana stealth and go up to see what I'm about to fight. Next we come to herbalism. Herbalism is very important. Okay? You should have one character who focuses just on herbalism, because it allows you to create potions, including healing potions and lyrium potions, right? Very important skill. You have to have at least one character, normally a mage in my opinion, to just focus on this skill. The next one is poison making. Now, my main character is focusing on poison making. The reason is, right, what poison making does is it allows you to create explosives, poisons, and coatings. Poisons are very powerful in this game, especially Deathroot Extract, which can stun a target, right? So the big advantage of having this with a tank is that because the tank is using weapon and shield, so they're not really a DPS class, damage per seconds class, it gives them extra damage, but also, I use Deathroot a lot, Deathroot Extract, because it has this chance to stun an enemy, which makes it very, very useful. But it also allows you to create explosives, which are like mini spells. So it gives you that additional crowd control. And as you level it up, you get access to more powerful abilities. So it's very useful. If you're making a rogue into a assassin style character, focusing on poison is very, very useful. And it gives you all these bombs, which are very useful for crowd control. Now, one of the things to note about poison is that what I generally do is I like to give each of my warriors at least 1 rank in poison making, because then it allows them to use bombs and even expert poisons, right? So you don't need to have the highest rank in so for instance, you don't need a rank in Master Poison Maker in order to create 4th tier poisons and grenades. In order to use them, you just need 1 rank, right? So very, very useful. This is one of the premier skills. Now, the other skill that we're going to talk about is combat training. Now, what combat training does is it unlocks. So I'll show you with this talent tree, right? So if we go here, so each of these lines here. So you'll see here, this requires master combat training to unlock. So basically what combat training does is as you level up, it allows you to unlock the next tier of spells, right? Which is very important for rogues and warriors. For mages, all it does is make it more difficult for them to be stopped from spell casting if they're attacked. But it's a very important skill for warriors in particular, and for rogues to an extent. So very important. I wouldn't bother with combat tactics. That just allows you to unlock more macros for the game, which I'll talk about in another video. Actually, I'll talk about it in this video. So, like I said, when you're playing this game, you really need to think about how your party is going to build as a whole, right? There's no point in having 4 warriors because you're going to have mages absolutely kill you. Warriors, for the most part, are not very good at crowd control. They can draw enemies to them to tank, but they're not really good at dealing with a lot of enemies, generally, unless you talk about specializations, right? Mages are very good for dealing with lots of enemies. Now, you can use bombs to deal with a lot of enemies, but mages are really, really good at that, right? So it's very important to think about your party build, right? Very important. So now we're going to talk about tactics, which I haven't covered before. So if you have a look here, these are like automatic presets. So for instance, if you have a look here, I've set it up so that if my main character is surrounded by at least 2 enemies, they'll use the ability Warcry. If their health is less than 25%, they'll use a healing potion. So understand, these allow you to sort of help automate your characters. Because Dragon Age Origins is a real-time game, in the sense that it's not turn-based, right? There is a pause feature, but it's not turn-based. You really need to make use of these to help keep your characters alive, right? They allow you to automate things, right? So very important, right? Mages get a lot of them. So you can see here, this character will auto heal if an ally's health is less than 50%, or if their own health is less than 50%. I've always got them set up to have rock armor and arcane shield, and spell shield, which are defensive abilities. So these help to automate things. Alright, so we're going to move on to the next section now. Alright, welcome to section 3, where we're going to talk about combat strategies. Alright, so we're going to talk about the pause feature, and I'll show you that. So let's have a look here. Alright, so I've paused the game with the space bar, And now what I'm doing is I'm issuing my orders. Let's look at that. So what I've got here is I've got the pause and I'm issuing commands. So I've got all these abilities down here. I'm going to use the stun ability on her. So the way that it works is that, like, when you hover over an enemy and you click attack, if you then click an ability, it'll actually tell you that it's going to use that ability. Let's have a look. Critical strike. Actually, this is one of the reasons of having... Okay, now she's stunned. And we're going to get him to use concentrated deathroot extract, and we'll get him. So it's important to sort of manage your abilities. I'm going to try hit her with the petrify spell. Actually, we'll use... Alright, so as you can see here, depending upon how you play the game can really change the way that the battle is. So we've got this wolf that's attacking. Alright, let's hit her with Sunder Armor. And you'll see that my tank is taking some big damage. Now, managing your stamina in this game is actually very powerful. I'm going to use the Templar ability. Okay. So now we're going to use mass rejuvenation to get back some stamina. Alright, let's go. So you see here how you pause, and then it allows you to dictate your actions. So if you've played... Okay, so she's dead. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go after these guys. We're going to use heal on him. Now you'll notice that I've got a lot of lyrium potions. You need a lot of lyrium potions because mages burn through... Alright, so she's taking damage. Now you'll see here that they just got stunned, and that's because of the concentrated deathroot venom. It's my favorite ability. And that's basically it. Understanding your abilities. So I had spell shield on. I didn't have to deal with mages, but I had spell shield on, arcane shield on, and rock armor on. So you only have so many abilities, which is why tactics come in real handy. So I always have these 2 tactics on to make sure that rock armor and arcane shield and spell shield are always active. Very important. So this was our guide to section 3. So like I said, it's very important to position your party members. You want your mages and your rogue, if your rogue is an archer, to be back, while you want your fighters up front. So like I said, you really want to manage your stamina carefully. You don't want to, I'm going to get rid of that ability. You really don't want to be using too many sustained abilities, because you've only got so much stamina, and you really want to have stamina to use like your activated abilities. So because this character is a tank, he's gonna have some sustained abilities. And then I've got my fighter Sten, who is using all the damaging abilities that cost stamina. So apart from Indomitable, to help him stay standing, he's not really using a lot of defensive ability, a lot of sustained abilities. Yep, so I guess we'll move on to the next section now. Alright, welcome to section 4, which is skill and talent selection. I already covered this, a little bit of this in the previous section, but in this game you need to choose skills and talents that complement your playstyle and party composition, right? So I sort of covered this before, but I'll go into it again. So like I said, there's a lot of skills and spells and talents in this game. So you sort of need to really think about what your party needs, right? So there's a couple of things that your party is going to really need. The first is tanking, in order to protect your mages and your rogues. The second is you'll need a damage dealer. You'll need crowd control, whether it's spells that stun a whole bunch of enemies or stuff like that. And you will also need healing, right? Now, there's multiple ways that you can do this. So, specifically talking about tanking, which I sort of covered before. For instance here, if you want to tank, what you're better off doing is having a weapon and shield warrior. And I've used the Templar and Champion specializations. I haven't unlocked all the other specializations, so I can't really speak to all of them. I haven't unlocked Reaver, but basically, one of the good things about this game is because you can see all the skills that are available straight from the beginning. You can sort of tailor your character in the beginning. So you'll see here, I've almost maxed out the weapon and shield tree. The weapon and shield tree is very good for defense and tanking. If you want two-handed, that's a damage dealer. With a little bit of there's the Indomitable ability that allows them to be immune to stun or knockdown effects while this mode is on, which is very, very useful for keeping your damage dealer in the fight. And you also have dual weapons. I haven't really used this much, but I've seen it's got like a lot of this is like, a rogue can also pick dual weapon as well, and then you've got archery as well. One thing to keep in mind about archery though is that if you have armor on, right, it actually, if you're wearing heavy armor, it imposes a massive penalty to attack speed with bows, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So you've got your base tree here as a warrior, which has got skills. Taunt is very useful for a tank. Threatened stance is also very useful. We've got some crowd control here that I'm going to be getting. So, like I said, you really want to think about your party composition. So you're going to have one tank. The skills of the tank are also very useful. So you'll need to max out your combat training, and then you can focus. I got extra coercion because I like to be able to pass speech checks, and then I'm going to focus on this character with poison making. So one thing to keep in mind about poisons is that, the good thing about poison making is that it also allows you to make explosives. Now, you'll notice here that there are different ranks of poison making. So the higher that you rank up, the better, the more powerful poisons and grenades you can create. That being said, in order to apply a poison or use a grenade, a character only needs 1 point in poison making, as you can see that I've done here with Sten, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So you're going to have one character who mainly focuses on poison making, but you can equip your other warriors with 1 rank of poison making so they can use those more powerful poisons. You'll also need a character to have herbalism for healing. There's basically two main types of healing. There's potions and spells. So if we go to Win, you'll see here that she has the Spirit Healer. She comes with the Spirit Healer specialization already built in, which has group heal and some powerful healing abilities. And you'll also notice here that she starts with the Earth Tree almost unlocked up to here, and Arcane Shield, and I think she starts with Regeneration and some Creation, right? So, in my party, Win does 2 things. She's a healer, right? And she's also a bit of team support. So she uses the Earthquake ability, which she starts off with. I like to use this ability because what it does is, in a massive area, it has a chance to knock people down every few seconds, which is really very useful for dealing with large amounts of archers or mages, especially if they're far away, right? Whereas Morrigan starts with Cone of Cold and this and up to Horror, right? So you got to really think about what your character's going to do in game, right? So Morrigan is an offensive spellcaster and a support, especially with her horror, with her sleep ability, which basically has a chance of putting all hostile creatures in a targeted area to sleep. And she's got Waking Nightmare as well, which is also very powerful. So she becomes more crowd control, but she can't actually get healing if you give her the Spirit Healer specialization, whereas Win is more of a defensive and a team support. So she starts with Regeneration and Heroic Aura, so I'm going to get her up to Heroic Defense and Haste, because Haste is very powerful support ability. So as you can see here, your characters only get up to level 25 in this game. With the expansions installed, so you're not going to be able to get all the spells that you want. So you've seriously got to think about what spells you want, and you've also got to understand that you can't get access to these more powerful spells until you get the previous spells in the chain. So that's very, very useful to understand, right? You're also going to need a rogue, like I said before. If you don't have a rogue, you're not going to have a character who can see and disarm traps. And you're also not going to have a character who can use lockpick in order to pick locks, so you can get more loot from chests and stuff like that. Very important. But you've got to seriously decide. So what I did with Win was I took 1 point in Spirit of Spell Shield because she kept getting killed by spells, right? So what this does is that when any hostile spell targets her, right? It has a 75% chance of being absorbed, and it drains mana instead. So basically, it's like a mana shield, right? As long as she's got mana, she's got a pretty good chance of getting rid of spells. And then I took 1 rank in Mind Blast because it basically stuns enemies near her, right? So very, very useful. I'm probably gonna get up to here, and then what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to start dipping into the See, misdirection hex is actually really good because it causes all normal hits on an enemy to become misses. This spell can actually allow you to defeat much more powerful enemies. But then you've also got some crowd control here. Now, one of the useful things about poison making is it allows you to create bombs. Bombs are a smaller area of effect AoE clearing abilities. You craft these. Any character with 1 rank in poison making can use these. These are very useful supplement to mages' AoEs, especially if you don't have offensive spells. Right? Now, one of the things about this game is that in order to get you actually have to buy recipes in order to craft things. You don't start with any of these, or I don't think you start with any of them, right? So you're actually going to have to spend gold in order to buy recipes to really make use of crafting, but crafting is very useful. Also, understand you're going to find a lot of healing items during the game. Make sure you use these. So that's now the last section that we're going to move on to. Yes, I forgot. So the other thing that you're talking about is unlocking specializations. As you go through the game, you will find specializations that you can unlock. Once these are unlocked, they'll always be unlocked even in your next playthrough. But specializations allow you to add ultimate abilities. So you can see here that Sten has the Berserker, and Liliana starts with Bard. Wynn starts with Spirit Healer, and Alistair starts with Templar. So specializations really... Now, the thing with specializations is you get to pick one at level 7 and one at level 14, right? So you can't have all 4 specializations. So you got to seriously think about... When you're first starting off, you're not really going to know. So I'll go into that in a separate video, but understand that specializations can unlock powerful abilities, right? Very important. So we're going to move on to the next section now. All right, so we've saved the best tip to last for beginners, and that is where to buy lyrium dust and elf fruit, right? This is actually something that I figured out during my first playthrough, but I had forgotten about it when I played the game again, and it's absolutely vital to understand where to get elf fruit and lyrium dust, right? The reason is, elf fruit is used in healing potions, and lyrium dust is used for lyrium potions, right? Which you're going to need quite a few of, okay? You're going to need quite a bit, right? Now, when you first start the game, right, you'll actually get access to a lot of herbs, right? But later towards the mid game, or at least when you start going to different areas, you're probably going to start running out of potions, especially if you go do the Circle of the Magi first, because once you go in there, you can't come out, right? So something to be aware of is if you need to get your hands onto lyrium dust, right, you can go to the Circle Tower. Now, you don't actually need to complete the Circle Tower quest in order to buy lyrium, because when you first go in the tower, there's a merchant there who has an unlimited supply of lyrium dust to sell you, right? And this is different from other sellers, because other sellers do sell lyrium dust, but they eventually run out of it. The merchant at the Circle Tower will not run out of lyrium dust, right? So if you ever need lyrium dust to make potions, you can always go there. The other one is the Brazilian outskirts, which is this is one of the main quest areas, like the Circle is, but there's a merchant at this area in the camp that has unlimited elf fruit, unlimited death root, and unlimited toxic extracts, right? but the big important thing is the unlimited elf fruit, right? So as a result of this, if you're ever running low on health potions and you've got ranks in herbalism, go to the Brisinian outskirts, and you can always go there. You don't have to complete the quest to go there, so you can go there, buy as much elf fruit as you need, make as much potions as you need, and then go and do whatever you want to do, right? So I believe that you can also get it from Wonders of you can also get lyrium dust from Wonders of Thedas in Denerim, but just be aware, because especially early on, if you will start running out of elf fruit that you collect naturally, and you will start to need to buy it, especially if you do the Circle of the Magi quest. So if you want to have a lot of health potions when you go in there, right? And this was our Dragon Age Origins Beginner's Guide. So we'll just do a recap of what we learned today. So the first was character creation tips. I went through how to allocate attributes for warriors, mages, and rogues, and that it's important to have a balanced build to help balance builds of not just your main character, but of your party, so that you can deal with the various challenges throughout the game. We covered party composition, of building a balanced party with roles like tank, damage dealer, healer, and support. So important thing was understanding each companion's strength and assigning them appropriate roles. We covered combat strategies like use of the pause and command feature to plan actions and manage the battlefield, and obviously positioning party members strategically and managing stamina and mana. We went through the skills and talents, and the skills, talents, and spells, and the specializations, and that you should consider investing in crafting skills. And we also went through the big tip, which is where you can buy unlimited lyrium dust and elf fruit, right? Very important. So this was G-Man Gaming and Reviews. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Any thoughts on the game? If you're excited about Dragon Age Veilguard coming out, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I will see you on the next video. All right, bye.